Here, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We will open with, we've been in closed session discussing legal matters and come out of closed session now. We'll have a roll call to see that we all came back.
Kearney?
Here.
Suter? Here. Crabtree?
Here.
Mitchell?
Here.
Mather?
Here.
Elmore?
Here.
Jordan?
Here.
Wheeler?
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Now we'll have the invocation offered by the Reverend Don Anderson.
Let's bow our heads for prayer. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, as we come to you today, we are so thankful for a beautiful day that you bestowed upon our city, and Lord, for all the blessings that you've given to us. And Father, tonight as we enter into this time of council meeting, I just pray that you'd give our leaders, Lord, the wisdom and the courage and the discernment to make the decisions that are in the best interest of our citizens. Father, I pray that you just give them, Lord, the direction that they need in leading our city. Thank you for them and their willingness to serve. And Father, tonight, as always, we just ask that you just bless those that are protecting our service and our community, those in the police and the fire and the EMS, and Lord, those that are taking care of the things to be able to make our community safer and better. We ask for your blessings and protection upon them. Once again, we ask your blessings upon this meeting tonight. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we'll proceed to public comments, and I'll start down the left side from the front. Is there anybody on the left side that'd like to address council? Okay. I'll move to the right, and you're right in front, Mr. Full.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Tell council who you are, please.
Thank you. My name is Jim Fall, and I'm an attorney who's honored to appear on behalf of the detectives, patrol officers, canine officers, sergeants, corporals, dispatchers, and animal control of the Lebanon Police Department. As of January, 30 people have signed authorization cards authorizing their chosen union, the IUPA, to represent them for the purposes of collective bargaining with the City of Lebanon and the Police Department. One additional employee has signed a card expressing interest in being represented by the union, and since that time, even more have signed authorization cards. This is a union that the Police Department employees themselves have reached out to, not one that has come to them. These men and women who have overwhelmingly reached out together to form a union for the purpose of collective bargaining with the city to improve their lives, the lives of their families, the police department, and the city as a whole, as well as exercise the rights granted them by the Missouri Constitution and repeatedly recognized by the Missouri Supreme Court. At the January meeting, the men and women of the Lebanon Police Department, some with their families, appeared before you for the first time, and at that time, no less than 25 police employees asked council to halt Ordinance 4051 as it was written then, because they believed that it would adversely affect the rights granted them as police officers and as Missouri citizens. In their words, in that January 24th letter, they felt that the proposed ordinance then would effectively delay, interfere, and disrupt the process towards recognition and bargaining. This council heard their words, installed the ordinance, and directed council to speak with us to try to reform it, and for that we thank you. After the January 24th, 15th council meeting, the Lebanon police employees attempted to gain voluntary recognition from the City of Lebanon. It is important to note that a number of recent Missouri Supreme Court cases have repeatedly found it appropriate to voluntarily recognize and bargain with a police officer union where there is an undisputed majority of employees who have chosen the union as their exclusive representative. To that end, on February 3rd, the police employees delivered to the city administrator to be forwarded to this council a letter requesting recognition and bargaining with copies of all 30 authorization cards and one showing of interest card. The letter further invited the city and council to review the originals at any time in place they wished. The police followed up with this request and an offer to show proof of overwhelming majority on February 6th, but were led to believe that such correspondence was inappropriate at the time. We have been informed that copies of these authorization and showing of interest cards provided to the city have been received but not reviewed and remain in a sealed envelope. I have brought copies of both the cards and the originals to share with you tonight if you so wish. At the City Council's direction, I have continued to be in contact with the city's outside counsel, who I'm happy to report has been respectful to both myself as well as the bargaining unit. While the proposed ordinance related to the election of the bargaining unit has made some substantial changes, the current language still has too many opportunities for delay and interruption that the police officers believe are unnecessary, as the city has in its possession objective evidence of an overwhelming majority of its police employees wish to engage in collective bargaining through their chosen representative, the IUPA. As it is written, the fastest I can see that an election and recognition would happen is 50 business days, and that's assuming that there is agreement on what the bargaining unit will look like, which is by no means certain. The ordinance as written simply has too much delay embedded in it for honest men and women who are merely trying to exercise their rights under the Missouri Constitution. It is better, however, than it has been before, and we do appreciate the negotiations and the bargaining and the back and forth that the City Council through their attorney and I have had. But for that reason, I and the men and women behind me, along with their families and coworkers, still respectfully request that the council recognize the IUPA as the detectives, patrol officers, canine unit officers, sergeants, corporals, dispatchers, and animal control of the Lebanon Police Department. I have the authorization cards with me for anyone in the council who wishes to see them, or the department, or their designee to view. With that, I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Mr. Full? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, going on back, anybody else on the right have something they'd like to address council on? Anybody at all on the right? And we'll move to discussions and presentations. There is in this country an organization called Government Financial Officers Association. It operates at all levels of government and has 17,000 some odd members, and one of the functions that they perform is an annual award for various budgeting and accounting practices. This year, that organization has seen fit to give the City of Lebanon and its finance department an award for the quality of the budget that they provided for fiscal 2015. And I'd like Kat Yell, our finance officer, to come forward, pick up the microphone, and bring your department with you, if you like.
Thank you.
Kat's going to say a few words, but I'd like to further point out that there are hundreds and hundreds of, I can't say man hours anymore, but people hours went into the preparation of this department, and effort on the part of every department head to provide input on their needs and make demands on the resources that were available to them. Now, Kat, I'd like to talk to you for a moment.
Just a moment, because I'm not really good at this, but it's a collaborative effort for all of us to work together and do this. But I really want to recognize Holly, because she's put a lot of long hours and time and dedication into this, and we could not have done it without her. So I really want to thank you.
At the last meeting, I announced a vacancy on the Lebanon Housing Authority and asked for nominations. I got one nomination from council and a resume, which you've all seen. Another resume from another individual, which came to me after I'd already agreed to appoint somebody else. But at this time, I would like to nominate for the vacancy on Lebanon Housing Authority, the Reverend Larry Duggar.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Carney?
Yes.
Suter?
Yes.
Crabtree?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Mather?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Wheeler?
Yes.
Move on the second.
Second.
Sorry, 1 second. Actually, those
I don't-
No,
Designate
that
one if
doesn't
we-
require a second.
Okay.
Now we'll move to ordinances and proceed with second reading of, warrants, thank you. You have in your packet the warrants for this month. Any questions about specific warrants?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Suter?
Yes.
Crabtree?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Mather?
Yes.
Elmore?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Wheeler?
Yes.
Carney?
Yes.
Now we'll move to ordinances and second readings, first of which is Council Bill 4051, which deals with the personnel situation that we just talked about, and will require an amendment since the bill is considerably shorter than it was when you first read it.
Mayor, Franklin's prepared to go through.
Do you want me to summarize? Do you want me to summarize the change?
Sir?
Do you want me to summarize the?
Certainly.
change? All right. I will say that we solicited from the Police Association through Mr. Fall his comments on this, and we went through actually 2 revisions to try and come to what we have now in front of you, with the idea to shorten the whole bill itself, but also the ordinance itself, but also to shorten the timelines in the ordinance to try and get to an election as quickly as we could, given the process that we had tried to establish. I made changes in a couple of ways. To begin with, changed and added definitions, which helped the process. Then a significant number of the changes in the bill became putting those words that we use, like showing of interest, bargaining unit, and other things that we defined into and then taking out certain things that were not needed because we had a definition for it. The changes that we made to shorten the time period, and this was, one of these was Mr. Fall's idea to come up with an exact time and try and make sure that we have a maximum number of days from a point in time that we can define to have the election, and that's in there now. After the Personnel Board directs the city administrator to move to the election, there's 20 business days to have that done. I will say to you, from my experience working in the private sector and in the public sector, that the timelines in this ordinance are probably shorter than the timelines in the federal statute that runs for the NLRB in having elections where they have as much as, I think it's 45 days to have an election after the election petitions processed, and they get to the point where they can have an election. We have, again, I think we talked about this the last time, we established a series of neutral people to make certain decisions so that that's not left to the city. The election would be conducted by somebody that would be agreed to, that would be neutral, not not an employee of the city or representative of the city, not an employee of the union or representative of the union, who would run the election. Same kind of thing for people that would check the showing of interest, those cards that Mr. Fall was speaking about, to make sure that there's an appropriate number of people to qualify to have an election. And those types of decisions, at least, I think the courts feel that, and I certainly agree that we ought to have neutral people to do those kinds of things. I also skinnied down the ordinance quite a bit by taking out a lot of the information about collective bargaining. Really, the whole term framework for collective bargaining is kind of a misnomer for what this is, but that's what the Supreme Court has always said when they talk about it in the independence case. They talk about this type of ordinance as a framework for collective bargaining. It's actually a framework for the election process, getting to the point where you select a particular representative for the union, and then you sit down and negotiate. The negotiation portion of it that was formerly in this ordinance didn't need to be there, frankly, because there's plenty of case law in Missouri right now about the appropriateness of the collective bargaining process, and I think it would be repeating the law, and it didn't need to be in here. As the employee walkout strikes and other disruptions provision doesn't need to be in there because there's law that prohibits that kind of information. If anybody has a question, I'd be glad to try and answer.
Can everybody back there hear okay? Okay.
Is this not on?
Yes,
I don't know. I just, looked like some of them were maybe having
Sorry,
trouble
moving
hearing.
forward. Somebody should have shouted out, I'm sorry.
I heard him. If I can hear it, I think anybody can hear it.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In the first paragraph of the ordinance, it's necessary to is scratched out and within its power to. Does that mean that it's not necessary to have this ordinance?
No, it just changed the words necessary to, and changed that to within its power. So it says it is within its power to establish a framework. The answer, in my view, is it is necessary. I think you need this. I think you need this ordinance, or we'd be. I would expect that you would think I would say that.
The way I read some of the rulings was, I think it was in Grandview, that you could, but it wasn't necessary. I think it was in the Grandview case.
I think that's
Is that
fair.
correct?
That's fair.
That's fair? Okay. And also, I would like to see us be a little closer together than where we are right now. I mean, time-wise, I don't know if that's possible, but I can sense some,
Here was my
discontent
concern.
on their side, and then you're talking a couple of months on, I guess, a vote. Is there any way that you can compromise and come closer together?
Here's my concern. First, the timelines in this are the maximum timelines. So things can always happen quicker, and some of these, like the election, could be held, and if you can get it together and everything clicks, you do it in 10 business days rather than 20. I'm not saying you have it on the 20th business day. That's not what the ordinance said. One of the concerns I have is whenever you set timelines in an ordinance, you better be prepared to be able to meet those timelines. If you don't meet the timelines, then you fall in violation of your own ordinance. And that, you certainly don't want to do that. And so, I guess, out of being a little bit conservative on some of these areas, you could get it done quicker, I think, in some of the areas. Like having the time for the election, you could have it. If you could get, you have to have a meeting for the personnel board to direct the city administrator to conduct the election. you have to have an agreement, or at least talk to the union about who the neutral person is that's going to run the election. That person has their own schedule that you don't necessarily control, so it might take several days for them to be able to be there. It may take a week or 2 weeks, I don't know. But you're gonna try and get those people in here as quickly as possible, but you also don't want to go over that time limit. So as you said, what I'm saying is if you set it too close, then you're gonna end up only violating your own ordinance. Don't want to do that.
I would just like to see both sides in more agreement than what we are right now.
Well, I have spoken with Mr. Fall and told him that, I mean, for what it's worth, I would work with them as best as I could to try and expedite. They already have their showing of interest in. It won't take any time to get that showing of interest checked. We could agree on some neutral person that is in Lebanon that'll come and look at 30 cards or how many of her cards that are in the packet, and we'll know probably in a day. And you will be on down the road, and that'll be significantly faster than the timeline that's set here.
I don't think that anybody has any interest in impeding the process any more than it has to be impeded. We have the highest regard for the police department in the city of Lebanon, and I have been saying that loudly and clearly for 3 years. I'm a little distressed that this is necessary, but it's part of the world we live in. We're not going to stand between you, and as soon as Mr. Fall and Mr. Ellis can get together and write on timeline and a person, this procedure will go forward.
Did Mr. Fall receive a copy of this prior to tonight? Do you know?
Right before the meeting.
So he hasn't had a
I gave him
chance
copy
to,
right before the meeting.
he hasn't had a chance to read it, or has he?
So I have to ask, I think he probably
You wanna-
didn't have an
you wanna say
adequate
something?
chance, I would say.
I'm more than happy. to-
Certainly.
Mr. Ellis did provide me with a copy of this beforehand, and he alerted me of it today while I was driving down here. I looked at it beforehand, and I understand that because not only is this take a lot of time, but we have busy practices as well. The main concern, if I may, if I'm out of line, I'm okay. The main concern for the timeline from the union's point of view is the question between finding what numbers have said that they want to be, go forward for an election, and what that unit will look like. That's the main. We see that as the biggest stumbling block. Again, not as an intent to delay. I want to be clear, but as a potential delay. The union thinks that the appropriate unit contains the certain number of groupings that I laid out. The sergeants, the detectives, the K-9 units. The union believes that all of those categories should bargain together. The city has not said whether or not they agree with that or not, have made some indications that they believe one or more of those units should be separate. Our concern is the delay between finding out, that we won an election and then getting to the certification to start that 20 days to determine whether or not the sergeants, for instance, will be bargaining with everyone else or as a separate unit. That's the delay that is of paramount to the union, which is why they ask for recognition and try to decide that issue at a later date. In all fairness, however, this is faster than we had talked about before. But the union, from the union's perspective, thinks with the overwhelming majority that we have now, it's unnecessary to go through that time and expense when we could maybe come to an agreement, either voluntarily or through some neutral third party, about the complement of who is in one union or who is maybe in a separate union for the purposes of collective bargaining.
Thank you again. Can I have a motion?
Well,
I have a question. So what is the time frame if this ordinance tonight isn't passed? What happens?
That's an excellent question, and I think that this ordinance will facilitate and speed up the process.
Right, so we brought back, so what, and these two can correct me at any point, but just from a procedural standpoint, the main bill is on the floor, that we brought it back on the agenda. So if there's, so in terms of a motion and a second, right? The main bill will be on the floor, then it needs to be amended, and then that amendment would then capture all of the changes, and then the motion and second would then adopt the bill. If we take no action, then the amendment doesn't exist, and then, so we're back to the original ordinance, and so we can either, it would either die, lack of a second, or if it were no motion, it could then be postponed, or, and then we would start the whole process over again, which would still require 2 readings over 2 meetings. So that's kind of where we are, is because we've got a first reading with the bill number, with the language, and so what's been presented to you by your guys' direction is essentially an amended version. We put the amendment in the packet. And so then if you guys vote to amend the bill, then all those changes that are identified will be incorporated, and then you would pass the bill as amended. So we can, I mean, it's either pass it as amended or fail the bill on second reading, which would start the process all over again. Or you could postpone it, but then we're still to the point where you postpone it to just delay it 2 weeks for yet another amendment and final reading. So those are sort of the options. Obviously, we've presented it. Your guys' just instructions to staff and council was to work with the union to make corrections to the bill. We feel we've done that, and so now we have presented those corrections to you. So,
Well, I can appreciate that, but I just wish that you could come a little closer together. Mr. Ellis, is that possible for y'all to come closer together? I mean, that's what, after all, that's what this is all about.
Well, I think we did come closer together.
Can you come
from
closer?
it. Can we get closer than that?
I mean, I'd like to see, some of their discontentment,
We're down to the point where I don't know that you can cut that much time out of it.
and the one thing that I'll say in terms of closeness, what we keep trying to say is we can run a lot of this in tangent because it's a going process, specifically related to this union with this particular proposed bargaining unit. What this does is it establishes codified language that will bind us in the future, and I think that's what Ransom's hesitation is in the future, if this has to be used again, then now we're really shrinking those timelines, and we don't know the situations that could be presented in the future, and that's why we're conservative on the timelines. But in terms of this particular, we have said that we would, like he said, the showing of interest has already occurred, so we can expedite the timeline inside of what we're proposing in the ordinance with this particular situation. I worry, and I think Ransom and Chris would concur, it's what we bind future councils with in terms of the timeline that is modified.
I think the option he's leaving out is we can be used right now. You know what I'm saying? You guys can pull this in right now.
That was my question.
Yeah, I don't think that's an option. Read the option.
Mr. Fall brought up a statement, I wrote it down, a voluntary recognition. Is that what you just?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
The ordinance, we wouldn't even need it at this point. You know, we're not looking for collective bargaining for this year. We're past that. We're just looking to be recognized so we can move on. That's all we're looking for. We've been doing this since January 14th, and the open door policy, that ain't there, I'm telling you. That ain't there.
If you're not in a rush to get the collective bargaining, then there's not a rush here. I mean, normally unions want to be recognized and move right to the table and sit down and start negotiating. And if that's, I think I heard you say that it's not a rush to get there right now because you're looking forward to do that in the future, I guess.
You can stand up.
I think we could probably trim this down to, I mean, somebody said 50 days, that's 50 cumulative days if you add everything up in here. I don't think that the normal situation is going to take 50 days.
Which is a maximum anyway.
Yeah.
With the caveat that there's an agreement upon what the complement of the bargaining unit is. That's the issue. If for whatever reason the city decides that a certain group that the union believes should be included is not included, then that 50 days window expands to a point that we don't know. To answer the collective bargaining issue, what Sergeant Early was referring to was we recognize that the budget is being done. There are plenty of things that are not budget related that the union can and wishes to collectively bargain on. We recognize and are very, very cognizant of and respectful of the budget process. As we just saw, take great pains to have an efficient and good budget process. And we realize that for the current fiscal year, it is unlikely that for the fiscal components of collective bargaining might be reached. However, there are plenty of other things that are not necessarily fiscally, wages, that kind of issues that are encompassed in collective bargaining that could be discussed immediately. And as I think the sergeant was just trying to point out, that if the concern is binding future councils, that's fine and understandable. And nothing prohibits the council from saying, okay, for this union, you're recognized for the purposes of collective bargaining. All future folks that don't fall within the law for the state as it sits now in 105 will be handled in this manner. Sorry.
I think Mr. Fall would have to admit that even his proposal on that we did not accept, the portion about the multiple ballots for the units, would still slow the process down. You would have an election, but you may ultimately have an issue on the backside of that as to whether or not the sergeants should, as an example, should be in with the other unit or not.
Oh.
It's going to be a slower process if that's an issue.
I do fully admit that, and I certainly do admit that. The difference would be that the ballots would have been cast, the election would have been held, you would have known what the potential complement was already, and then the only issue is, are they together or are they separate, rather than is there a union by counting them differently and then maybe potentially having to rerun an election. We thought that would be a more efficient manner.
I think that we're ready to accept that there's going to be a union in the police department, and the negotiation process is essentially that which Mr. Ellis and Mr. Paul come up with after this passes. I'd like to have a motion on the ordinance for a second reading.
Are we going for a second reading on this?
Yes, we are.
We have to have a motion, and then we'll amend it.
Or no motion.
Or no motion?
Okay, that's fine.
Anybody?
there needs to be a motion on the second reading, a motion and a second to bring the bill to the floor, and then a motion and a second to amend the bill. That's procedurally what has to happen.
I'm sorry, I can't hear it. I apologize.
So, that's procedurally what has to happen.
Repeat the record.
Yeah, so there needs to be a motion and a second to bring the bill up for second reading. And then after it's on the floor, then there's a motion and a second to amend it. And then after that, then you would then vote on the motion to second read and final pass the ordinance. And then so it can bring the bill
Or the
number.
third choice is, as you said earlier, or there's a third choice, not to make any motion at all. You said that earlier.
Sure, no, there's always that option. But, I mean, then it's still a first, it's still setting out there as a first read.
Correct,
It doesn't die.
correct.
It just,
And the process does drag on.
Unless we go voluntarily and recognize them.
I'm sorry?
Unless we voluntarily recognize them.
that's council, that's.
Did you make a motion?
You talking to her?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't tell
Well,
who you were looking
I
at.
definitely would like to see the amendments addressed, because we definitely, don't want the original bill. Because we do want the how they came together to be addressed.
Well, if we agree to
It
accept
has to be on the
them-
floor
if we
before
agree
it can
to
be
accept
amended.
them, we don't need this. Is that correct?
Correct.
But maybe, well,
Let Mr. Ellis address this.
yeah, so.
And preference.
We're looking at, there's two separate issues.
Okay.
You're asking the wrong person. I mean, what I understand, you need to bring the bill up to a second reading. The first question needs to bring up the second reading. And you don't vote on that. You just have a motion and a
Yeah,
second.
right.
And if either one of those fail, then it doesn't come out as a second reading.
They're asking you the difference between adopting this versus voluntary recognition.
The difference?
Yes.
Well,
Or can we do both? Can we adopt the amended
Nope.
and then
yes,
No.
yes.
we could still, we could accept, because I feel like we need to have this for future councils. But then we could go ahead and voluntarily recognize what our current situation is now.
I mean, assuming that the answer is basically yes, you can do both.
But the core of the conversation, we make the
Well, in order to recognize you, it really, your obligation to determine that, in fact, the majority of the people in the appropriate unit did present something that shows, in fact, that they want the unit to represent.
It looks like they have something
And,
there.
everybody said that's the case. We haven't seen it yet, but that would be easy to determine.
She has it there evidently.
I realize that, but you don't want to look at it, sorry, you don't want to look at it unless you're prepared to recognize, because the minute you get notice of it and knowledge of the numbers, then if it's a majority, you'll be obligated to recognize. You may want to do that, but if you want to do this ordinance, you probably ought to do that first and then make a decision whether or not you want to recognize, if that's where you're headed.
Well,
So if they had given us those, as they tried to hand out that night, those cards, would that have been giving proof that they had done it?
If they gave you the cards,
Yeah, they tried to pass them out to us that night.
they passed them out and you all came.
4 weeks
and
ago.
had knowledge of the.
no, we didn't see, we didn't look at them.
We
They
were
were
suggesting-
presented to us.
We were advised to not look at them.
And if I may, Your Honors, that sitting in a sealed envelope that was delivered to the city on February 3rd are copies of all of the cards and a demand or a request to be recognized and bargain on that unit. So the city has been out, they were placed in a sealed envelope, and for reasons unknown to me, not looked at. But they've been in the city's possession since February 3rd.
Since February 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Too many.
Copies of. The originals have not been. The originals have always been with me. Copies of the cards with a invitation to review the originals have been.
Okay, if we should choose, if council as a whole should choose to recognize them, explain again to me why we need this ordinance. Just explain to me why. I mean, I don't mind doing it if, because they were nodding their head as if, they would agree to it, but explain it to me again.
All right. Number one,
Sorry.
that's all right. A lot of time has been put in trying to get this right. That's maybe an ego issue on my part. Number two, we don't know the results of, what can happen with the union is you could recognize the union disbands at some point in time. Those things happen. They quit wanting to negotiate with you, then somebody else comes in. You have a decertification election, which means people in the unit no longer want the union that they had, so they decertify that union, and you couldn't do that without an election process. You have a decertification election, or the union goes away, and then another union comes in and wants to take over. You don't have a process for it. You're going to be right back to square one trying to do this again. Will any of those things happen? I don't know.
So if we voluntarily recognize them, and this would basically be for future framework.
If you voluntarily recognize it.
Correct. So if we postponed this by not making a motion on it tonight, voluntarily recognized them, and at the next one voted on this, that would still be fine.
You mean you recognize I guess you could do that.
One of the issues, so I'll speak straight from management standpoint. So tonight, yet again, I heard the third version of now animal control is a part of the unit. So each and every time that they've attempted to communicate to us, their unit definition has changed. So I think cautionary is recognizing the union is a component, recognizing the bargaining unit and who exactly will be represented, whether it be dispatchers, animal control, officers, detectives, sergeants. That is at the heart of what is, I think, their concern and our concern, because it's like I said, this is the first time tonight, was the first time I'd ever heard that animal control was now part of this bargaining unit. So what this does is that it allows for a methodology to really understand the bargaining unit. It's not about, in terms of recognition of the union, it also allows us to have that conversation. And I think
You also, animal control officer may or may not, the animal control officer may or may not be covered by the Missouri statute. This is a statute to take care of people that are outside the Missouri statute.
As an individual, I have no objection to animal control being involved because they report to the same entity.
I don't know the structure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The important thing that you want to do with the collective bargaining unit is to establish a unit that has a community of interest. They all have similar working conditions, similar wages, maybe they're on the same wage scale, they have same types of issues in the workplace. Their wages, hours, terms and conditions are essentially the same. It's not good practice to have groups that are not that do not have community of interest together, because then it becomes extremely difficult to negotiate agreements with.
I presented this thing to you 2 meetings ago as providing a framework. It provides a framework. And there is no interest on the part of the city in delaying this process any more than it absolutely has to be delayed. And I'd like to see a motion. I'd like to see this bill amended. I'd like to see this bill pass so the procedure can commence.
Thank you. We've got unique circumstances here in which all or virtually all of the police department has appeared before this group on at least 2 occasions asking for this. I don't know anything about union negotiations or labor law, and I will defer to Mr. Ellis on that. There is no item on the agenda to recognize the police as the union negotiator tonight, so we couldn't take those steps under my understanding, even if we wanted to, because that's not officially before us. I think the biggest concern for the city administration is the definition of the union bargaining unit and what that is comprised of. And I think that is a question of law that's going to determine how this whole process moves forward. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Ellis?
Yes, sir.
And I think we need to receive information as to the law and how that applies to us as the negotiations go forward. And I think that the crux of the matter, is what the bargaining unit is actually going to be comprised of. And
I think that's the biggest issue.
You know, I would like to see if that could be resolved, you know, negotiated one-on-one or whatever, and bring it back to this group.
I will say that Mr. Fall and I have had at least 2 conversations on the phone about that very issue and about the scope of the bargaining unit and how to address it, and we have different opinions. The cases in Missouri are split. They're probably, it all comes down to the sergeants, I think, and there are units that have been long established in Missouri that have sergeants included with patrolmen, and there's a brand new case up north where the court, and it's up at the Court of Appeals, and who knows what the Court of Appeals will do, but the court found that, the circuit court found that, in fact, the sergeants were not appropriate to be in the unit with patrolmen.
Is it possible that this could speed up the process?
In what respect?
To come up with an agreed definition?
Of what the bargaining unit is?
Yes.
That would
Subject to negotiation.
I would assume that if I would agree with what Mr. Ellis reports, that seems to be the biggest sticking point from our position, for 2 reasons, both because we believe that they're properly included for reasons spoken, but also because of the potential delay that would cause in the second part of the unit. And if there could be some discussion, we have discussed different ways to go through the election, with that being not a primary interest or decision in getting to the election, but dealing with that provision after an election, whether or not they're a separate unit or their own unit or in. Those things have been discussed about when to decide that, either amongst ourselves or by a third-party neutral.
It's very difficult to conduct an election when you don't know who's eligible to be in the election. So the whole process being, you establish what the unit is, and then you have an election to determine whether or not they want to be represented by the union or the organization. And no matter where you are, if you're in the private sector or the public sector, that process is one of the one process that can take a little bit of time. But if you get ahead of yourself on that, you will cause yourself even more potential problems down the road, my opinion.
And Randy, that's why that part of, instead of negotiating, part of this ordinance lays out essentially who makes the decision and how that decision is rendered in terms of defining the definition of the unit. And I think that is and I think we've got a procedure that is judicial in how that decision is made. And I think that's why we put that in there, so that we could go through a judicial process to make that decision. I mean, that's part of our reason to adopt this, so that we know exactly how to proceed forward.
And just from the position of the union, they would prefer that if the city believes somebody is, some organization or some grouping category of employees rather, are appropriately not included with the rest of them, to be included in their own unit, or potentially no unit, that decision be made afterwards, so as those folks that everybody agrees are properly in the unit are able to get to a expedient election and begin the bargaining process. I'll agree with Mr. Ransom that it is the sticking point.
But it sounds like from what you just said, for a majority, when you do concur on the majority that belong to the unit, that can still move forward while you're still kind of
I'm of the belief that is possible. I'm of the belief that is possible. I'm also can present to you that if we are talking about sergeants, we're happy to, and I'm going to assume for the sake of argument that we're talking just about the sergeants at this time, and be willing to hear from the city if that is not in fact correct. But that the union is happy to work out a situation to decide if there's an appropriate way to resolve that amongst ourselves post-election or post-recognition, that we would agree to, if we were recognized, to go ahead and arbitrate the decision of the sergeants afterwards, or whatever the case may be.
Actually sounds like we haven't got a lot of differences.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if that issue could be worked out, I think this thing would sail through the process. That is the one sticking point that
Exactly. The city has
could
an
slow the thing down. That one process,
As long as
because
it's only
you have a
2
neutral
versus 5.
person come in. And
In plain English, gentlemen, is there a chance that the two of you could come back in 2 weeks and tell us you've reached an agreement and that this could be done by recognition?
we've been so focused, the two of us have been so focused on trying to get the amendment here and shooting drafts back and forth, and Mr. Falls in San Luis trying to communicate with his client down here, and we haven't talked a lot about it. We've talked in general about the issue, but we haven't talked specifically about it. And so the answer to your question, Mr. Suter, is if that's what council wants me to do,
I don't want to do that unless you two guys are telling us tonight that it's worth the effort.
I'm, as I stated, the union, if there's a way to recognize the union, have the voluntary recognition, and have the issue of sergeants in the same unit or as their own separate bargaining unit arbitrated at a later date with that stipulation for voluntary recognition, I can tell you that from the International's perspective, that's acceptable.
But I don't know if just 2 bargaining units are the sticky point, but because just listening to Mr. Hurd said 5 different ones that I counted.
Correct. Well, if I'll present to you that they're the only ones I know that I've been informed about. However, if there are sticking points at other units, to that end, we would be certainly willing to sit down and see what we could agree to about what an appropriate complement is, and where we disagree on what the complement of the bargaining unit is, find some third party neutral to help us decide that issue.
It's the way the process works in the state. I mean, it works in the state and with the NLRB in the private sector. The very first thing is the union submits a petition supported by a showing of interest. The showing of interest is never shown to the employer. The state board of mediation checks it. Then you go, the petition has a definition of the unit on it. The unit is shown to the employer. The employer makes a determination whether or not they think those employees are appropriate unit or not an appropriate unit. If they're not appropriate, at least I always go to the union if I know the union person and say, can we come to an agreement on this? So this group shouldn't be in there, or this should be. If you can't agree on that, then it goes to a hearing before the state board of mediation. The state board of mediation makes a determination, and you have your
But
election.
that's in the state.
That's exactly the same format we have here, except we don't have the state board of mediation.
We have the personnel board, and so that's why we've laid out the procedure we've laid out. So ultimately, the personnel board is going to make the decision on whether or not the appropriateness, or make a recommendation to council on whether the appropriateness of the unit makes sense. So that's part and parcel of why we want this procedure passed, so that we can walk through this process.
But it won't make it even to the personnel board until the bargaining units are hashed out.
No.
They're the ones that hash it out.
No. I simply, according to this ordinance, as soon as I receive it, I automatically get the personnel board involved in this discussion, and I tell you whether or not I think it's appropriate or not, and then if you say we don't agree with your recommendation, then you start that process. So, and if I say it's good, then you say have an election. So, that's exactly how that lays out. And so you can, if I come to you and give you the management position on why we don't think the unit is proper, then you say, well, we do, then I'm calling for an election. That's that check and balance that we put in to keep it. And then once the election occurs, that comes to council for ratification. And so, that's the mechanism that we put in place to help make these decisions along the way. So we do have a sticking point, and I'm representing my entire management team on what we've kind of talked about, which is why we want a procedure in place to help us get to conclusion with this. Because if not, then we're going to come back. Even under voluntary recognition, you guys have to do that. So I'm going to have to rely on Ransom to come up with a procedure for your voluntary recognition, because if we don't agree with whatever they put forward, I think you guys should know that from management standpoint. So that's part of the concern with voluntary recognition, is that if we have concerns, I should. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why we're wanting to lay out a procedure for us to.
So do I understand then if we act on this and approve this amendment, it can start tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Mr. Fall,
Rather than put it off 2 weeks?
Yeah, there's not gonna be a 2-week delay.
what's an acceptable time span? 30 days? 20 days?
For what, Your Honor?
Run through this process
The process for the
as laid out in the ordinance.
as laid out in the ordinance.
From the union's point of view, 30 days.
They're thinking 50.
Well, that's 50 is the max.
50's,
but it can happen a lot
what's-
quicker than that.
Oh, I should hope.
20, 30 days?
I believe within 20 days right now, the administration will get to the person under this statute. And
Would that satisfy you?
I would like it to be less than 20 days, but I think the 20 days is acceptable if we can come to an agreement on what the bargaining unit is. Our concern is that delay that is unknown, that is inherently in here. If it runs and then we can run it quicker, I think there's no reason why we couldn't have an election within 30. However, that's me speaking from the union's point of view, and obviously I won't speak for management.
When you talk about the delay that's in here, clarify that a little bit.
On the third page, it says at G that from 30 business days from the date the petition is open, the clerk will notify the union and everybody of when the petition should be given to the city administrator. At that point, so there's 30 days there. Maybe they won't take the whole 30 days. And as Mr. Ellis did point out, it's 30 plus cards. No reason why it should take a month. And I understand the reason for giving it outside. As an attorney, I understand that. However, the city administrator then says, we'll submit to the personnel board a written recommendation. If the personnel board does not agree, or if the union does not agree with what the personnel board decides, then it goes to a third party neutral. There's no way of knowing how long that could be. By the time we find a mediator or an arbitrator, if we're not able to come to an agreement, with the caveat that Mr. Ellis and I have been working well together. But there are certain things that you can't come to an agreement on because your clients are too far apart.
Including getting a date from some third party who
Absolutely.
is not, get a mediator right now.
We could agree on who the arbitrator is, and the arbitrator could say, all right, I can hear this in 4 months. At which day,
That's
when
out
that
of everybody's control, though.
We
right,
need another arbitrator.
that's out of our control. But
Why
in
we
the
don't have a time period in the ordinance.
but in the meantime, the rest of the complement of the union has not been recognized, and the rest of the complement of the union, who we may otherwise agree on, has not been recognized and is not collectively bargaining, as is their rights under the Missouri Constitution. That's the concern, and that's why the union would like to have the decision of whether or not it's a single unit or multiple units decided after an election rather than before an election. Because then if it's after the election and they say, oh, well, the sergeants need to be their own unit, we can say, all right, we'll handle that. But in the meantime, why don't we see if there's stuff that can start being negotiated with the sergeants alone if they end up being separate, or with the other people alone if they end up being separate, and going forward there to preserve their rights under the Constitution.
But there's an inherent problem with that. The way it's worked forever, and again, public and private sector, you take baby steps, and the baby steps begin with the process of determining what the unit that's appropriate. You have to get that stabilized, and everybody understands who's involved to have an election. Once you have the election, you determine if they want the union, that's fine. And then you sit down and negotiate for that complete unit. You don't have 4 or 5 people over here or a piecemeal of people over here that may or may not be in that unit when you start negotiations. You have everybody, because it puts frankly the city at a huge disadvantage, not knowing if they're going to negotiate with 4 more people over here who may have particular interest on a particular issue. You get resolution on that issue with the others, but you can't get resolution on with the 4. We're going to be chasing our tails in negotiations. You have again, baby steps, and I'm sorry, it's just the way the process works. And you go from the election, establishing the unit, to the election. Once the election is determined, assuming you have no objections, that's another thing that could happen, but I trust that we wouldn't. You're immediately going to negotiations. At that point, you're negotiating with the complete unit.
So at this point, is one of the main problems to determine whether the sergeants, we'll use the sergeants as whether they'll be included in the same group or not. Is that one of the
That seems, and again, not to speak for the city, but that's what it seems is the sticking point from where I sit and with the union. That seems to be the major sticking point.
And then who would come together to make that determination?
Personnel.
The personnel board.
Well, you would make the recommendation to us.
Well, yeah, just as I do on everything I present to the personnel board, I always make a recommendation. And then you can either accept it, reject it, or.
So
modify it.
potentially, just from the list, we could have 5 bargaining units.
Yeah, so there are, the state statute, you guys jump in, the state statute, the reason we're doing this is specific for police officers because they're exempt from the statute. So, I think that there's a valid discussion to say, hey, dispatchers, hey, on patrol, you're not exempt from state law. You don't fall under these cases. Now, we can decide as an organization that that's okay. And but that's part of the discussion we need to have as an organization. That's why this procedure lays out. But dispatchers and animal patrol are not subject to exclusion from the state statute. So all the cases that have been heard to this point don't apply to them. So neither would this ordinance, because by the title, which is what we first read, it's folks that don't fall under meet and confer. So, and so that's a decision matrix that I will lay forward. The personnel board and the council can simply say, we think just let them all group together and separate the sergeants, or no, we want to put we want this group, and this group. And that's why we've turned that into an administrative procedure within the personnel board as this ordinance is adopted, so that we can have that discussion. So that's why we have put this forward in that. And I hope that articulates that. But that's our concern. And I'm speaking for us and all the rest of the management team. So that's our concern, is making sure that we have an appropriate. It's like, does everybody work the same amount of hours? Does dispatch officers, detectives, and sergeants work the exact same hours? Do they work under the same working conditions?
So when if this should go to the personnel board, and once they make their determination, is that the final
Yes.
stop? There's no appeal?
No.
Like there would be for
That's correct. That is why they call for the election under the appeal. If both parties can't agree, that's where the independent party comes in to help render a decision. But the act still resides at the personnel board, not under our normal appeal process.
Appeal board, that's,
Yeah, it goes to a third party, and the personnel board and the union with the third party hammer out the details.
to a third party instead of to the balance of the council.
That's correct.
Yeah, there is an appeal to a third-party neutral.
That's correct.
Yes.
And he was asking, we have another appeal process.
Yeah, not through an internal personnel advisory, but through a third-party
Oh,
neutral.
I read that in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
So what's your pleasure?
I think it's important that we have this framework and we have the assurances of our attorney and our administrator that this will go forward smoothly without any unnecessary delays. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the original so that we can amend it. Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further conversation? Can I have a roll call?
Now
we
we make a
motion
motion to amend.
That's true. We need to, the amendment.
Make a motion to amend as outlined.
Second.
Crabtree?
Being the state's in here, it's not necessary, I vote no.
Mitchell?
It's my understanding from what I've just heard that if we do this, it can proceed from tomorrow. So I'm going to vote yes so that this can get the ball rolling.
Mather?
Yes.
Elmore?
No.
Jordan?
Yes.
Wheeler? No. Ernie?
No.
Suter.
Yes.
And the results are?
4-4, Mayor.
And the mayor votes yes.
That's two men.
That's to amend.
I'm sorry?
That was to amend.
That was to amend.
I understand that.
Sorry.
Now we vote on the amended.
Now we amend the motion.
Now,
Now another. So this is on the actual bill as amended. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mather,
Yes.
Elmore,
No.
Jordan,
Yes.
Wheeler,
No.
Ernie,
No.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
No.
4-4 tie, Mayor.
yes. Council Bill 4051, as amended, has been passed and is now ordinance 5317. Now we'll move to first and second readings, of which we have many. And most of them deal with service agreements. You know, this has been a subject of conversation for a long time. After the first service agreement season, it was my idea that it wasn't appropriate for this body to be giving away tax money to various organizations. That feeling has grown on this body, and earlier this year it was agreed that we would limit service agreements to $2,000 per institution, and that we would not do this in the future. We are limiting it to $2,000 this time, or we are agreeing to do it this time because some of these entities had us in their budget, and they've depended on us for years. Therefore, we'll start with Council Bill 4065, which deals with the service agreement for the youth senior center.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mather,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Move on to second.
Second.
Elmore,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Wheeler,
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Council Bill 4065 has been passed and is ordinance 5318. Council Bill 4066 is a service agreement with the Free Store Ministry.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Jordan,
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather,
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Move on second.
Second.
Wheeler,
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Mather,
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Council Bill 4066 has been passed and is ordinance 5319. Council Bill 4067 deals with the service agreement for Cross Lines Ministry.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sorry, who seconded that?
Either way.
Ernie,
Yes.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Council Bill 4067 is passed and is ordinance 53.
Move on the second.
We did the second. Okay.
We're going so fast.
Suter,
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
4067 is now passed and is ordinance 5320. Council Bill 4068 deals with the Lebanon, Laclede County Literacy Council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Crabtree,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Move on to second.
Second.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Council Bill 4068 is passed and is ordinance 5321. Council Bill 4069 deals with the service agreement for L Live.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Move on second.
Second.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Council Bill 4069 is passed and is ordinance 5322. Council Bill 4070 deals with the service agreement for Route 66 Society.
So moved.
Second.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Move on second.
Second.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Council Bill 4070 is passed and is ordinance 5323. Council Bill 4071 deals with service agreement for Chamber of Commerce Local Make Sense Committee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Move on second.
Second.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Council Bill 4071 is passed and is ordinance 5324. Council Bill 4072 is a service agreement for Laclede Industries.
I have a question on that one.
Yep, I'm ready to answer that one.
Okay. Why is that one for so much?
Okay, so this is not in our budget. This is not under that service agreement component. It's in a different area in our recycling. This is the amount of money that is included in the grant that we received from the solid waste district. So this is a simple pass-through, and this is our procedure to pass through it. So it's not our own money, and it's all grant supported, and that's why it falls under.
Could we call it something besides a service agreement?
No, ma'am, you can't.
Okay.
Wrong place.
Wrong place for it. Okay.
That's why I just put them all in there together. But it is a grant that we received by the solid waste district.
So we're really not giving any money?
We are not giving any money. It's simply
Okay.
passing through.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Oh, move on second.
Second.
Forgot where I was at.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Council Bill 4072 is passed and becomes ordinance 5325. And that concludes the service agreements. Council Bill 4073 deals with improvements along Route 64 to Route 5.
This way.
I think he wants to say something.
Yeah, the agreement, so this is an agreement between MoDOT and the city to do improvements related to sidewalks from LSK basically up to Elm. And so there's 3 agreements in there. There's a portion that is where the city is going to do work on the state right-of-way. We're going to do state work on state right-of-way, and they're going to compensate us for it. And the rest of it is we're going to do work on city right-of-way, because most of Jefferson is city right-of-way, and they are essentially allowing they're going to compensate us to do work that they're obligated to do. So, and then the third agreement just allows those funds those Fed and state funds to come directly to the city for reimbursement of the project. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard, and he can kind of go through the actual project itself on the work being performed.
Basically what happened was the state went in to resurface this road, and there was complications within improving the pedestrian sidewalks and ramps paralleling Jefferson. So they split that out, and they let the bid out last summer for the work to be done to resurface the road. And then whenever they started finalizing the project budget for this sidewalk improvements, there was limited funding available to do this. They actually talked to me and wanted the city of Lebanon to select one side of the road for these improvements to be made. And so I sat on that for a little while, and I fired back and asked them if they would entertain the idea of us doing the improvements so we wouldn't have neighbors mad at neighbors and neighbors mad at the city of Lebanon. So we worked together on putting together the cost and the scope of the project, and this is what we got. We're gonna be improving all the sidewalks, curb ramps at the intersections. We'll be improving the signal lights to make them ADA compliant, and we'll be improving a lot of the driveway approaches that will make them ADA compliant. I think we'll have a very good product once we're done. We're going to be addressing some of the things that would probably be that was not in the scope for the state to have a better product.
And MoDOT is footing the whole bill?
Yeah, basically what'll happen is on their portion of the right-of-way, it'll be a 80-20 split. The feds will pick up 80%, and then the state will pick up the remaining 20%. On the piece of the right-of-way that is ours, it'll be an 80-20 split. Theoretically, it'll be 20% on us. There's enough monies in here to take care of that project, though.
So our 20% will be forced labor, machinery, and stuff like that. So that's where our 20% match will come in. So we'll get 80% reimbursement on time and materials reimbursed.
And on page 4, it talks about lack of construction progress. You think you can get it done and not?
We'll have to, don't I?
Yeah. So, but you think you can, because they'll pull everything if not.
Well, just as long as you guys don't have any pet projects that push to me. I mean, this is locking in 10 guys for.
When's it starting?
Beginning in July.
July. It's about 3 years overdue.
So you'll hire extra people, is what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we can get a lot of pet projects done between now and then.
Yeah.
State will do the engineering.
Yeah, state, that's one of the things we negotiated, the state's actually engineering it, so there's some cost savings for us there.
So some of those pet projects that we need done, such as lots of potholes filled in, will get done before July.
We patched 113 Friday and today.
And I know we talked about the other end of Washington. I mean, it's really bad right now.
We're working with them to get that out on the street to get bid.
Not a pet project. I mean, we talked about it before when we were doing Bryce about, is it cost effective to do it ourselves? Is it, because then we do tie up all of our personnel, all of our thing, or is it better to contract out?
Yeah, so we are the contractor here on this one. It is our intent to hire temp employees for this defined project, and it is outside of it's outside of the travel way, and so that's how we're going to save cost so that we can get the product that we should have there, with it being on both sides, because MoDOT contracts it out going on one side, and so that's why we intend to
hire in temp employees for the purpose of doing this project.
So if we have some pet projects, as you like to say so kindly, that we might need to contract those out then.
That would be an option, yes.
Right.
I have,
I think that was disrespectful.
in our staff plan that I've presented in the budget, there is quite a few temporary employees and seasonal employees to bring on to backfill.
We're up to the chairman.
Any further questions? Somebody like to give us a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Move on to second.
Second.
I'm sorry, would you two?
Sheila, I think.
I didn't say me.
Someone second that. Who wants
Yes,
to
I will second it.
shoot? Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Council Bill 4073 has been approved and is ordinance 5326. Council Bill 4074 deals with contract Burns and McDonald to engineer the lighting at the airport.
This has been presented to the Airport Advisory Board. They are forwarding the recommendation to approve. This utilizes an existing contract with Burns and Mac, and MoDOT has concurred, so we would like to get this project started. So the first step of it is engineering, so it's for your consideration.
Where will the money come from? Which fund?
73, the airport fund.
fund.
Yes, it will be matching dollars. It will be matching dollars out of the airport fund.
I still.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Move on second.
Second.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Ernie.
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Council Bill 4074 is approved and becomes ordinance 5327. Council Bill 4075 involves declaration of surplus for various city items and disposal thereof.
So this is, yeah, so we're trying to get rid of some of our surplus stuff. We will continue to have other things come forward, but this is just surplus. You notice there's a couple of areas on the list where we have indicated a donation. Sam can speak to that if you guys wish, but the bottom line is we are wanting to have another auction so that we can get rid of some of the stuff that is no longer needed.
I have a question. Do we not donate, or is this stuff that other agencies wouldn't want? We used to donate like to Lebanon Rural or to other.
There are lists, part of that list is donated, where it says donation behind it.
Yeah, but we donate to them. Is that what you're saying? That is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those, I just wanted to identify what essentially being
So
donated.
those are what we give to them.
Yeah, so that's where you, on the list, on the exhibit, if you see where it says donation, that means chief's intent is to donate that to an organization, and if it doesn't have donation, then we're slating it for sale.
Your voice is
But we have
coming
to
from over
declare
there.
it surplus first.
Yeah, yeah, and then, yes.
Before we can donate it.
Okay, so with particular item to the bunker gear and the bunker boots, we have historically over a number of years donated that equipment through the state of Missouri's Division of Fire Safety. There is a state statute, if you'll forgive me, I've got it right here, 320.091. If we want to donate the bunker gear, the state of Missouri, if we go through them, they accept all liability if anybody gets injured wearing that gear. Removes us from it. We can if we have a local department come up to us and say, hey, I need a set of bunker gear, are you willing to give that to me? We can identify them and go through the state process. If we can't, we still want to donate it to the Division of Fire Safety and let them distribute it throughout the state as they feel necessary to relieve the city of Lebanon from any liability. Otherwise, we cut it up and destroy it and nobody gets a benefit out of it.
So that's our plan.
So it's my recommendation that we find local people who want it. If we can't, we give it to Division of Fire Safety and they distribute it as they see necessary.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Still have question? You know my feelings.
Go ahead, I've got one too.
Okay. You know my feelings with out of state. Mr. Crabtree had asked for a list of what we sold last time and amount. I don't think we've gotten that yet. And do you have plans to do a better job than last time when the council didn't even know when the auction occurred?
I'm going to put an ad and run an ad in the newspaper encouraging bidders locally to sign up and talk and give them the website and essentially do a 3 or 4 column ad is what we kind of talked about. And so that we'll run that on a couple of weekend editions in the lead up to the sale.
And no plan on when this sale will be?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at is we sort of want a couple of cars in the sale because that seems to attract more buyers. And so you guys over the last couple of meetings have approved the surplus and purchase of cars. And so I do want to sort of see if once those cars are delivered and then the other cars can be put out of service, go ahead and try to schedule it around that. So, and I can keep you guys up to speed on when we but I'm wanting the authorization so that once we get a group, because the other thing is if we, as everybody starts doing spring cleaning, we may put some spring cleaning stuff, a couple of cars, some spring cleaning stuff, a couple of cars. So I just want that authorization and this stuff to be declared surplus so that when we get what we feel it will be together, we can just proceed to do it.
Seems like there would be appropriate to put the link to that on the city's website as well, and information on the website.
And we had a lot of local bidders last time.
Did everything sell last time?
I believe so. I believe.
Everything?
Yeah, I think everything sold.
So
yeah.
there's no leftover? I was just gonna ask if it didn't, what,
And
you just
we
put
got-
it back on there again, I
We got
guess.
$22,000. Oh yeah, we would absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we got somewhere around $22,000.
Okay.
We do have a detailed list, and I do apologize.
All right.
And that goes into each specific fund that the item came out of.
Came out of, right. So once
It's hard
these
to
lots are
track.
defined, then the general fund and the park fund will split most of this. The cars wherever they're. I mean, and we try to get the biggest bang for our buck. So, and I think last time we did a pretty good job. So.
Is that pretty much cleaned up our Highway 32 compound out there? The stuff sitting around out there?
There's still some, but really we're trying to clean up some of the park venue. I mean, really.
That
there's
continually builds out there, I mean, through the year though,
Oh,
doesn't it?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so it'll never be cleaned up, really. Well, they continually put things out there, that's what I'm saying, all year long.
Well, I mean, I'm still trying to get us to kind of.
Build a fence around it.
Well, yes, I've been wanting us to get rid of a lot of the
Well, it
stuff.
just looks better for the city if it's pretty well
Absolutely.
kept clean.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so $22,045 is what we received. Ford van went for $2,100. Crown Vics went from all the way from $975 down to $725. Dodge Ram went for $200. The truck and chassis went for about $2,000. Ford Ranger $1,500. The largest thing was the Ford F550, which was $6,700. another Crown Vic and Silverado went, Crown Vic for $850, Silverado went for $3,100. So, and that's again why we want to have the authorization, declare the surplus, have the authorization, so that when we get a couple of cars, we can put a lot together. And what they do is they then combine us with other local municipalities and governmental units to have a big auction to bring as many people as possible.
What was the commission on that?
We don't pay any commission. They pay a buyer's premium. And so that's sort of why, I mean, we get whatever the bid price is, and so we don't pay any commission, and that's one of the reasons we like this. They come in, they do the marketing, they take the pictures, you pay a 10% buyer's premium on what your winning bid, and you have 30 days to remove the item or forfeit the item, still paying the money. So, and that's part of why even if somebody didn't pick something up, we'd get the money, we could resell it again, we'd sell something. So it really is a nice, and again, all local folks can bid on it. That's suffice.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Kearney.
No.
Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Move on. Second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry. Zero. Suter.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mather.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Kearney.
No.
Council Bill 4075 is passed and is ordinance 5328.
Can I go back to something on the airport vote a little bit ago? And this is what happens when you don't look at your notes. On one of the pages, there was some X's, it was highlighted where percent was supposed to be, and I meant to bring that up, and I'm sorry. Can you clarify
So,
that?
Lena's working from afar, and she put in the agreement, and I asked them to send me an executable one. So that is filled out. It's a DBE requirement, which is a disadvantaged business. The goal for this project, I think, is 8%. Because of the value of the contract and the DBE that they're using, they're going to reach 12%. And so there was some clarification on what that number needed to be. They went ahead and put the 12% requirement in there, so the ordinance that will be actually executed will have that filled out at 12%. But it's a state requirement.
Right, but
I mean,
That concludes our first and second readings, and we'll be moving to a first reading on the electric rate ordinance, which I would hope would take about 3 minutes, but since we've been talking about it for 2 years, it may not. So, is there any interest in taking a recess before we start on this?
No.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Crabtree.
Oh,
No.
whoa, whoa, whoa. We're gonna have some discussion.
as I said, do we want?
Certainly will have discussion. That's why I
We're gonna have at least
suggested that we
one.
might want to take a break. Go. We have first and second, right?
Do I need?
Okay. Discuss.
On section 9, that's 7-8 cents that I mentioned.
On the second
yeah.
reading, it
There's
should
a
be
typo.
8%, or 8 cents, so
Okay.
I will make that change on the second.
It moves up to 8 cents,
It
right?
does, you're correct. But yes,
So-
the written word is
so-
wrong, the number's right, yep. So I will make that correction for the second reading if we have to.
When will we get a request for qualifications?
So we'll probably put it in the budget, and I plan to present the budget to you in April, and so that's I'll put that out on the street, and then it'll be probably expensed in the FY16 budget year.
You say you'll put it on the street. When do you expect to do that?
I mean, I can do it whenever you guys want me to do it. I mean, I think we need to.
Absolutely, as soon as possible.
Yeah, but I think we need to decide just like we did with the comprehensive plan, I think we need to decide what the scope of the RFQ is going to be in terms of the actual study. What are we studying? What do we want the scope to study? What do we want? So.
Can we do that at the next work session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, sure can.
I have one other question. On the service availability charge, how does that apply when someone has power disconnected? Does it apply then?
No.
Okay.
No.
Someone had asked and I couldn't answer.
No, it's a monthly, it'll be a monthly fee.
But it applies only when power is being provided?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, especially under the single billing now, it would only be applicable if they have an active service.
Well, as most everybody knows, I'm opposed to this ordinance for various reasons. The very first one being, it is, in my opinion, it's unfair to the residential customers to not all receive the same increase. I don't know why anyone would want to increase one percentage and another percentage and another one something else when it could all be fair. You were elected here to represent the people, and I think they feel they need to be represented equal. Second, the service availability rate, which some of you feel is so important. I don't know why you feel it's important. A service availability rate is not needed. Since the history of Lebanon, there's never been a service availability rate. There's always been money available to maintain. I know some of you said you checked the surrounding areas and everybody has a service availability rate. Fine and dandy. That does not mean that we need a service availability rate. There's no good reason for a service availability rate. Even the mayor said, I don't know why we need a service availability rate. But he talked to someone that knows about electricity and they said, we need one, so guess we need one. Well, I don't think that's a good reason to burden the people of Lebanon with a service availability rate. The only thing a service availability rate does is open another door, give another avenue to a rate hike, which will be called a service availability rate. You can get $2.8 million without it. You're not gaining anything. The only thing you're doing, as the mayor said, if you'll just bite the bullet one time, which kind of reminds me of Adam and Eve and the apple, just one time, you'll open the door for the future councils to come in and say, well, we need some more money to maintain. We had to give a raise last year. We needed a new truck. The cost of fuel's gone up. It will be very easy to come in and raise the cost of electricity to the people. A year or two later, they'll come back and say, well, the rates have gone up. Now we need another increase in the electric rates. In my opinion, those people, communities around us that have service availability rates, they have them, in my opinion, for one of two reasons. They had an uninformed council, or they had a weak council when they enacted them, and they was not looking out for the best interest of the people. And I truly believe that. I'm not just, I really believe that. If you pass this ordinance tonight and you enact, put in place a service availability rate, you will be the first in the history of Lebanon to burden the citizens with another avenue for an increase in the future. You absolutely do not need it. We've never needed it before. We've always had the money. Whatever $6 is equal to, that should go to maintain. You can get that without having it added as a service availability rate. I think that's a bad call. I think you're setting up the future councils and the citizens for a bad situation. Lebanon's never needed it before, and they don't need it now. And I would encourage each one of you to think real strongly before you enact a service availability rate on the citizens of Lebanon. It's going to be there from now on. That's it.
Anybody else?
I concur what Mr. Gilmore is saying.
I just want to clarify one thing. Every resident will be paying a $6 availability charge. Every resident has the same rate. It's for the first 300 kilowatts, it's 0.14. For the next 900, it's 0.090. The remaining is 0.075. To me, that is equal. It is exactly the same for every house. And then there's the winter rate on top of that. To me, it makes perfect sense to delineate between your operational expenses and your actual cost of acquiring power. And that's what that does. Because we have confusion now. People see the revenue coming in at 23 million, and they see the cost of buying power at 23 million, and they say, well, what's the problem? Why is there a discrepancy, or why is there a shortage? Because they're forgetting that it costs about $4 million to get that power and to maintain our lines and to pay our personnel on top of that. So you have that extra expense. So if you separate out your look at it as your service availability addresses those operational costs, and then your actual energy charge is what you're actually paying for your energy, which in ideal world, maybe someday that's going to go back down, you know, and then we can adjust the energy charges back down. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there is a difference between the two rates, and that's how I look at it.
Well, that service availability charge doesn't really honestly differentiate what the true cost is. Because they said we needed 20, but they asked for 12, then they dropped it to 8, and then now it's down to 6. So they're just pulling numbers out of the air. Just
No.
anything, they would settle for 4 right now to
Well, I agree with you.
this,
It's not enough to cover.
to get the service availability rate started. They would settle for anything right now. They're no different. They're no different than state government or federal government. They just want more revenue. It's your job to look out for the citizens. Now that you've mentioned that, because I had notes and I think they're laying on the kitchen table. You can get to the same figure, $2.8 million, if you'll do straight percent across the board. No one can say in any shape or form that it is unfair to anyone. Everybody pays the same. Everybody knows what they get. Everybody. So why would you want to impose another charge that just opens an avenue to continue to raise the cost to the people? I think we should be looking out for our people. The people that elected us to take care of their business. And we can get there without giving them service availability rate. Richard don't care if you call it a service. He just wants the money.
I
He just wants the
disagree.
money. He
Richard
don't
has
care.
said this was the main thing he wanted.
Well,
on
because
this
he'll get more money, but
No,
mean,
because
as long as he gets a billion or whatever.
One scenario that I'd shared is the fact that it cost us money to deliver power to a home, regardless of what volume they use. As technologies change, there may be avenues for customers to be able to put self-generation in place to be able to mitigate the amount of energy they use, thereby other customers subsidizing the cost to provide power to that home without them using it.
But We're nowhere near that right now.
Not there yet.
We're not nowhere near that. So enacting it right now would be rather premature. I still say it's another revenue to easily, or another avenue to easily raise the rates that the charge that the consumer's gonna pay for electricity in the future. Just bite that bullet just one time, make it easier for the people down the road. That's what we were told, and I disagree with it. But y'all, I know you probably, most of you made up your mind, but I wish you would reconsider. When you can get the same amount of money on a percentage across the board. Cut, dried, over with. I'm done.
Anybody else? We have a motion.
Crabtree,
No.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Mather,
Yes.
Elmore,
No.
Jordan,
Yes.
Wheeler,
No.
Ernie,
Yes.
Suter.
Yes.
Move on the second.
No, we're not gonna have one time.
Oh, good
I was
job.
trying.
Good try.
Sorry.
Good try.
That concludes our ordinances for tonight and brings us to old business. Does anybody have anything else they want to discuss?
Don't know if it's under old business or not, but I'm on the personnel board. The three of us, I think, will make this run just as fast as we can get it through there. Of course, your interest is ours, okay? So there will be no problems with us as far as dragging our feet or whatever. So just as fast as we can get her going. I'm available tonight after hours. If you want to stay a while longer, we'll start it now. That's all I had.
When you give them what they're asking.
Okay.
That's the question.
Anything that you classify as old business? Then we'll move to staff comments. Anything from management of the police department?
No, sir.
Management of the fire department?
I like the way he gave you the long meeting.
Just a couple of things. One, we'll be moving forward with a promotional process in the fire department in the next 2 weeks. That's been something we've been waiting on for a while, and we're finally there, ready to get that taken care of. And I hope within the next meeting or two to have a presentation to some personnel that I hope to make in front of the council. So,
We appreciate
Thank
you
you.
doing it in front of the council.
Yes.
We wish all departments did.
All right, Richard, what are you doing?
I apologize for the choice of words I used earlier. Probably wasn't the brightest thing.
No, it wasn't.
What I was wanting to get across was I'm loaded up with work. If the budget gets approved as it was presented, as it will be presented to council, and so if there's any shifting gears, there will have to be some adjustments made with personnel, or something will have to suffer. So that's what I wanted to communicate. Also, we've been reviewing our PCI on our roads, and we've made great advancements in that. I hope to bring that to you here in the next 30 days to show you how well we've done with following the plan that the council's adopted for the past couple of years.
Mr. Allen, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Hurt.
2 items. One, if you could leave your laptops, we need to do some updates, and then we'll also put the CIP on your desktop so that you can have that, review that at your leisure. Number 2, just to reaffirm what Mr. Jordan said, Ransom asked me to select a local minister tomorrow morning to help look at the ballots, so we will start that process in earnest first thing tomorrow morning. So, just wanted to give you that kind of update. So, that's all I got. Any questions for me?
Well,
Now we'll move to council comments, and I'll start with you, Ms. Muntrum.
I have a couple of things to say. I would have liked for the amended proposal, I caught it at the tail end, but I would have liked for that to have been cleaned up when it was sent out, because that was really hard to read, and it was very confusing.
There was a clean.
After you. I caught it at the end, but reading through my packet, it was, I wondered why you'd done that. So anyway, I did catch it. I actually came tonight thinking I was going to abstain because I'd missed the first go-around and wasn't sure what was happening. And I appreciate both councils presenting their case, and it was very helpful to hear from you tonight, sir, to help me make up my mind and whether it was the absolute right or wrong choice. I felt like we'll be able to get you all going much quicker by jumping in there. So that was that. I also just wanted to commend my fellow council members for Thursday night. I thought that actually our work session went really well, and we don't always all agree, and we're probably not going to always agree on big things, but I'm glad we finally came to a decision. So that's it.
Mr. Crabtree.
Yes, I'd like to commend the city employees as taking care of the streets in that 5 inches or plus of snow and ice. They did a good job. A lot of places around the country had a lot of wrecks, and I think we got through without any major fatalities or anything.
Mr. Suter? Nothing. Ms. Herring?
I was just wondering, with Lena out, if we're still on track with our plastic pavement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will be coming on board.
Yes, in fact, let the record reflect that Mr. Ben was the first test pilot of paying his utility bill with a plastic card. So he will forever be in Lebanon's history.
So when will it be open to the public? Do we have a date?
I still think we're shooting for the end of this month.
And
yeah, so we're progressing right along.
Start earning my cash back.
Thank you for that inquiry. And we will, don't worry, there's lots of t-shirts, and I'll be giving you guys all a button that you can wear that says, "Ask me about debit and credit card." You guys can wear.
Ooh, can we shoot them out of a gun?
Oh, the
Not within the
t-shirts?
city
Yeah, the
limits.
t-shirts.
Bean flipper, rubber
Not
band
within the
gun.
city limits, sorry.
Rubber band.
No projectiles. Be breaking an ordinance if you started shooting. No projectiles. It's an ordinance.
Okay.
Anything further, Ms.
Potato bins.
Herring?
I'm
Anything
done.
further? Ms. Mather?
In regards to the service agreements, it makes me sad that those are coming to an end, because I feel like a lot of them, a lot of the organizations do things that directly benefit our community as a whole and our citizenry, and I just feel like, you know, we should do things that help our community if we've got the money. Now that's for debate, but so I just want to say that.
I agree. I think there was a lot of mixed emotions on that, but the decision was made, I believe, because the people suggested to us as a majority that they didn't want us spending their tax dollars. So that is why I think, I had some mixed emotions about it too, because some of them I really care a lot about, and they're all good organizations, but you got to listen to people sometimes, at least. Secondly, I would like to say I still disagree with this hike, the increase on the electricity. And if the people in the city of Lebanon don't like it, if they dislike it as much as I do, they will contact their councilman and let them know. That's about all we can do.
Mr. Jordan?
Nothing?
Well,
Mr.
since I'm
Weather.
last, I get to echo whatever has already been said. I certainly agree with your statement. I hate to see the service agreements go away. I think they do a tremendous